Shall we begin?
Yeah, you can start.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ECTF's webinar series number 6, and the topic is very important and very critical for everybody here. And the topic is impact of stress on young children's learning and development. This webinar is organized by Early Childhood Development Foundation, known as ECTF, and supported by Tender Petals, a chain of preschools. ECTF is an initiative of DNA Foundation for Children and Women Welfare, which aims at working on empowering children from all the strata of the society, early childhood facilitators, parents, and other stakeholders. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, today ECTF has brought together some of the experts to one platform to have a very qualitative discussion and exchange of ideas. I am Miss Mriti Shweta Samantre, your moderator for the webinar. I hail from marketing communication background and am actively involved in brand and image building exercises with a decade of experience in media management, PR, and more. Additionally, I'm also a climate activist. Today, I'm going to take you through a journey of understanding the impact of stress on children and how to deal with it. So, today we have with us Dr. Vasvi Acharya, founder chairperson of ECTF and DNA Foundation for Children and Women Welfare. We also have with us Meenakshi Bhatthakur. She is a consultant psychologist, and our third panelist, Rabia Bhatia, a change maker and educationist, motivator, mentor, HR, and brand communication expert. Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker, Ms. Rabia Bhatia, works as the head of brand and communication for various organizations and individuals. She is an independent HR personnel. She is also a workshop facilitator and a brand and communication mentor with various schools. And she has been conferred with Rex Karamveer Fellowship Global Awards and Rex Karamveer Bronze Award. So let's welcome our first panelist, Ms. Rabia Bhatia, on the stage.
Hi,
Here you
Simriti.
go.
Hi, Simriti. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. And I would like to thank Dr. Vasavi for giving me this platform to share my thought process and my views about the stress management when it comes to the children, how they deal with it, and what kind of problems they face when they are under stress, how it affects their learning and their daily life actually. Being a mother, I'll just start with the scenario. Being a mother, I'm a mother of two young daughters. However, they are in college now, to be honest. Still, as a mother, for me as a mother, there would be always kid, right? And we all know that we are going through a pandemic situation for past 6 to 8 months now. All students, children are coping up with this kind of stress when they are unable to go out and they are locked in at home. They are unable to meet their friends physically. They are unable to meet their teachers physically, which is impacting their learning a big time base. How and why? Stress is something when we are not able to cope up with the daily situation, with the life situations, whatever is happening around us. Now, a child is, they are in a habit of going out and play. They are in a habit of going out and meet their friends physically. They are so habitual to go to school, study there, play with the toys. But now, because of this lockdown, they are just trapped at home. They are unable to do all the activities, all the physical activities, all the outdoor play activities, due to which they are dealing with a lot of stress. They are dealing with the online classes, which is actually not allowing them for that kind of brain development which happens when they are out, when they are in the society, when they are physically in the presence in the class. Their eyes are getting stressed up. The you know the physical development is not there. So what is happening now? They are getting frustrated at home. They fight with their siblings, they fight with their parents, they fight with their whosoever at home. They are unable to have that kind of cordial relationships with them. So to be honest, stress is not good, be it for a kid, be it for a youth, be it for a young professional, or be it us as educators or as parents. So at any age group, for any age group, stress is something which we should avoid. There are certain things which we can deal with while taking care of the stress, and there are certain things which we are unable to deal with in our daily life, which actually takes a toll on our life and become a stress and then leads to depression actually. So, stress is something at times we are helpless. We have to take stress of certain situations. But how to deal with those stress things, and how, as a parent or as non parent, non teacher, non educator, we can always help our kids or these children to cope up with the stress. I will just give a one situation here, a one word actually, and later on I'll be able to elaborate more. The compassion. when we ha- when we are talking to a child, whether we are a parent or not, whether we are educator or not, this compassion has to come into picture when we are dealing with these kids, because as a compassionate heart, we would be more closer to the kid. We will be able to understand their mindset. We will be able to understand the status of their mind, what kind of situation they are dealing with, how we can help them, how we can build up a bond with them and a rapport with them, so that they can open up, they can come up to us and share their problems with us, so that the stress level should not be a problem factor for the child, and should not be an obstacle for their brain development or a physical development. So I think later on I'll be able to elaborate more. So Smriti, over to you. This is what I believe the stress is. And yes, tell me how we can, how you want me to explain more, and is there any particular question you want me to answer? Please share your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Rabia. Um, I'm keeping my video closed because of the network fluctuation. Before we move on to panel discussion, let's move on to our next speaker. Her name is Miss Minakshi Bhatthakur. She is the consultant psychologist at Mind India, Institute of Positive Mental Health, Behavior Issues and Academic Performance. Currently, she is working as a consultant psychologist for Royal Global School and National Law University and Judicial Academy, as well as for East End Nursing Home. Ms. Bhatthakur will take us through a very informative PPT to help us understand the knacks of combat strategies for stress. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Smriti, and
Thank
good afternoon and very warm welcome to all. Thank you, Rabia, for this introduction to stress. And thank you, Dr. Vasavi, ACDF Forum, for inviting me and having me here. And speaking about the topic which is very close to my heart always, that is working with children. I think throughout our lives, all of us have all been exposed to some kind of stress, as a young child, as an adult, and also when we grow old. So we see the old people also, they're having stress. But as we are growing, I think we try to incorporate some coping mechanisms, and along the way, somehow we are able to cope with these stressors. Some of us are successful, some of us are not, and I think those who are not successful in handling this stress, definitely there is something wrong with our early lives and what we have been through. And today, I think, giving it a psychological perspective, I would like to speak on why children should not have stress, why the young children should not have stress. So I will be sharing a PPT. I hope I can share my screen, Smriti. Can I just?
Yeah, it's visible.
Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. So I'm getting used to this online sharing of screen, I think. Anyway,
Yep.
so while talking of impact, it is most important to know that the psychological and physiological disorders both are viewed by professionals. So that is why, as a developmental perspective, so I think that is why it's important to understand that if stress happens, what are the problems later on in life? Now, most of the issues are unresolved during our early childhood, as I said. And sometimes the situation does not help us, to be stress-free. Certain tasks are not mastered during the specific ages, during the growing stage. And of course, there are the biological and the environmental factors, which is ever so important. Now, most of us here know that, the formative years is 0 to 5 years. So that means it goes to say that the day the mother conceives, actually learning starts for us as a parent and also for the child. And this development, it happens at each stage. It's like a chain, So what you attain in one capacity in the chain, you learn from what has happened before. And this chain does not finish, it keeps growing. So there is emotional development, there's motor development, ultimately leading to some logical thinking. So you can say something like, I'm very happy because you gave me an ice cream. So the child can relate to logical thinking also. Unfortunately, we come back to the same story, more focus is given on the physical health, things like nutrition. Of course, nutrition is one of the most important, thing for cognitive growth. But now science says that, stressful or adverse childhood experience, as ACE it is called now, it can alter your child development. So how does that happen? There will always be a medical story and there'll always be a reality story. So maybe medical science will not be able to agree to everything that we psychologists might say that, okay, stress is the cause of this and this disorder. But yes, we all know that for neurological development and the psychosocial development, children stress is, it has a major role. Because children are learners, they are learning all the time. They need sensation, they need touch, they need to feel loved. At the same time, they're so helpless and they're so dependent on us. So it works on a two-way basis as to how we are providing the right kind of environment for them to grow in a healthy atmosphere. And if you just take a look, so I had a picture so that we don't have to read too much, from the crawling stage to the time you hold the cane in your hand. A simple example, psychologically again, suppose a baby has a need, maybe the baby is hungry and the baby cries, and the need is met by the caregiver. So maybe it's a bottle of milk, and then the trust develops as early as that. So that is a healthy attachment, cycle, because these are the relationships, these are the connections, these are the attachments that the child will have with the caregiver, be it a parent, be it a surrogate mother, be it a caregiver, a teacher, it does not matter who it is. And then again, if the baby has a need and the child, the need is not met by the caregiver, the trust does not develop and rage develops, instead of having a trustful association with the caregiver. I tried to look for a picture with the brain, I wish I found this picture earlier, and I wish I knew it as very young, that I need to hold this organ very carefully with a lot of love. It is a very important organ in our body. And we take it so much for granted that we are not, holding it so carefully. And before, instead of going into all the scientific procedure of the brain, what, I will just put it simply. There are parts of the brain which will handle your higher mental functions. And what is more important is the middle, the box over here. Those are your attention, those are feelings, desires, or reasoning. So this is a part of the brain which are activated. How it is activated is, that is the basic need of the child through your connections and the attachments, which again starts as early as 0 years. Now this multiple interaction of a child along with the caregiver, there'll be a lot of learning, there'll be a lot of unlearning, new skills are learned. If the baby smiles at the mother smiles back, and immediately there's an emotional and a mental development, a cognitive development. So sometimes the mother might be very soothing as a voice, just as a voice to the child, or it could be aversive. And again, father or mother, vice versa. It could be a very, sensitive and happy touch, or it could be very overstimulating, or it could be a very upsetting experience. That will depend on, the situation. Now, so far, so good. All these things are happening. We have all these plans in our hand, and then everything just goes haywire, because life does not treat you the way you want it to be. And then things like neglect comes in. There are parental fights, there are abuses, there are verbal, emotional, sexual, does not matter what kind of abuse it is. There's a lot of poverty in many children. And there's, of course, parental stress. So just to look at the pictures here, I think, if a child grows up in this kind of an environment, it is but obvious there will be it will be hampering their learning. It will be hampering their, development at one stage or the other. And then something that we call stress, of course, that develops, Now, again, most of us know this, that there is good stress and bad stress. So good stress is excellent. We need that kind of stress, like how we needed to log in today at 4 o'clock. If we did not have that stress, we would have logged in at 4:15. So these are the good kind of stresses. And the mild to moderate level of stress, these are challenges for a child. So, and it acts as a stimulus for the brain to develop. So it is most important, and a teacher or a parent or a caregiver, they need to know how much to stretch, how much to stretch the brain growth by giving the things that they need to give the child to do. And if the child is too worried, just a simple mechanism, just help them handle the disappointments, and there goes away the stress. I'm sure it's not as simple as that, but we'll have to try out all mechanisms. So there's a fight and flight and freeze, mode where you try to fight back. If you cannot fight back, you fly away, which we do most of the time, I think. And if we cannot do anything, we just freeze. And then later on in life, maybe 20 years, 30 years, somehow it will come out and, it will try to attack us again. What is important here, that adverse situations in life, it doesn't happen to the child. It happens to the brain and it happens to the body. So that is why the reactions are so difficult to handle. I have just put up a few, behavioral, emotional, reactions over here. So you can just take a quick look. I won't be able to go through all the long list over here, but I'm sure we can relate to quite a few that is given here. We see bullying in children, we see aggression, and then emotionally we see sadness. There's something called childhood depression also. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of anxiety. I'm sure we as adults can also identify with quite a few things that are given over here related to stress, And now with the present situation, of course, everything is just getting magnified. But again, children are so resilient, they can handle the stress. It is still, again, to some extent, it is a good kind of stress. But things like addictions and all are developing because of prior stress, which is, buffered by the present stress. And suppose it goes on and on, then that is when the problem starts, I think. And the physical, it could be fatigue, it could be stomach issues, it could be appetite changes, sweating, breathing difficulties. And of course, the more known mental ones, depression and dreams and nightmare, and leading to higher levels where there is suicide also. And then, of course, now the science also says that, diseases like cancer, diabetes, autoimmune diseases are also related to stress. Again, we'll have to shunt between the medical model and what is being proven now by science. That is, we know now that is it's happening, but still we need medically approved situations to find out whether, these diseases are there because of stress or not. Now, psychologically, I think what is important, it's not the cause of the stress. If you just see yourself, sometimes things that happen to us, I'm sure we have forgotten what that incident is also. If you just go back and try to think and you said, oh, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I know I'm very angry. I'm still angry. And, I'm disappointed. I don't want to talk with that person. I don't want to do this. So we are carrying the stress with us. And then if a child is in that survival mode every time, the child will always see danger. Child will not be in a calm mind. And again, as I said, the external stress happens, and how is learning going to happen? Learning is definitely not about academics. There has to be social learning, there has to be emotional learning. So child who is stressed from before will not do well in exams. And then we try to hit only the symptoms. We do not go back to the disease. So there are 3 stages, I think. A poor child suppose a child in poverty has stress now. That child will not be able to grow up in a proper way. So the child has addictions later on. And then what happens? Diseases follow. So for no fault of the child, there will be 3 stages of, lot of issues for the child. From the stress of not being able to have a, rich home, and then addictions. And then, of course, because of the addictions, the diseases are to follow. So because of this link, I think now it is very important to know that stress is a cause. As adults, they're most likely to be getting into crime. Okay? And now also racial discrimination, which I just read about it recently, is found to have led to an increase in ADHD among some communities, which is attention deficit and hyperactive. So it is not only a genetic, problem, genetic gene that is determining everything. It is the environment, it is the behavior, and it is the relationship and the attachment too. So what can we do? I think first of all, we need to know that emotions have a role to play in our physiology. We have Rabia spoke about compassion. That is, one of the main things that we need to get into our system, that we have to be compassionate, we have to be warm, we have to be nurturing towards the child. And the good news is that stress can be buffered, it can be reversed, and we cannot separate the environment. So just a line for the parents and teachers and all those who are listening to us today, behaviors could be an escape from early childhood pain, suffering, and stress. So we need to find out the conditions. Okay? Stress is rigid, it is very intense. Let us get together and help our children, because they just need love, I think, and they need a little bit of, encouragement from us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was quite insightful. Negligence is definitely one of the catalysts of the stress for stress in any children. And yes, we all are aware of ADHD. But moving on to various other aspects, various other factors that you have cited, they also play a very critical role um, in actually creating stress. And yes, we need to know the combat strategies, like you have already indicated that parents need to take some measures in understanding children and to create that environment, give them that aura which should be very positive for them, so that they get these vibes which can help them imbibe positivity in themselves and certainly move forward with a lot of confidence. Now, moving on to our next speaker and the main person behind these series of discussions, we have with us Dr. Vasavi Acharya, who wears a hat with multiple feathers. She is the founder chairperson of ECDF and DNA Foundation for Children and Women Welfare. She is the MD of Inner Eye Foundation Private Limited and Tender Petals preschool chain that has its center all across the northeastern India and North India. She is the former trainer of TIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Guwahati. She is also the CEO of EdClan. She is an author, she is a mentor, trainer, and an awardee. So let's welcome our final speaker before we move on to our next session, which is the panel discussion.
Hi,
Vasavi, over
Smriti.
to you.
Uh, yes, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And well, coming to stress. Stress, like already my co-speakers have spoken, and Meenakshi has already given a very elaborate PPT on stress, the stressors, the kind of stress, and basically what is the impact and what we can do about it. So she's briefly introduced all of that. And I would add here that there's nothing more to add in terms of adding, but I would just like to put on a few of my observations as an educator, since I run the preschool chain, and I've been meeting with parents of children who are aged 2 to 6 years. Uh, I can see that sometimes parents. I would talk from the parent angle. They have some expectations of the children from the early years, and that also kind of stresses the child to no limits, because the child does not understand competition, they do not understand comparison, and they are completely unaware of what all these what is its peer doing, or whether somebody is doing it well or not. And so when there is some pressure exerted on the child at that point of time, that you need to perform better, you need to write faster, you need to answer all the questions, that it in itself creates a lot of confusion in the mind of the child, and also develops stress and probably the feeling that they are not okay and somebody else is okay, and these kind of feeling at the end of the day stays for your entire life. And when you grow up, and when the child becomes a grown up and is faced with different life situations, they still get that feeling from the back of their mind that probably they are not okay. So here I would want to elaborate that stress for an early child, for a child in their early years, is something they kind of absorb from the environment. They absorb from the people around them, because they do not have a critical mind to think in those terms. They take life as it comes. And also, when a parent, when as parents we talk to our child, and if the child has done something wrong and we make a face and we show an angry face, even that causes an amount of stress, because the child is not able to analyze what is the mistake, and they think that there is something wrong. So these kind of feelings, the feeling starts developing a network probably in the child's mind that gives negative feelings at times. So we need to kind of ensure that children are always nurtured in the right manner, and with the perfect dose of stress, which we call the e-stress, which is basically the positive stress, which Meenakshi already talked about. There's some level of stress we need to undergo in order to motivate ourselves to move ahead. Even now, if I am walking today 10,000 steps, tomorrow I would, think that I'll do 12,000 steps, and that kind of generates a little bit of stress, but that is a positive stress that kind of motivates me to, do better. But again, if we look at excessive stress, which is a very thin line between the positive and the, eustress and the de-stress, because that's a very thin line, and parents kind of, cross it over without even knowing. So here, from positive stress, from motivating the child, they move on to actually stressing the child to such a level that the child develops mental problems, their mental health sometimes, is affected. So that is my comments on stress per se.
Thank you so much, Vasavi, for uh, literally decoding it for more in a more explanatory way. So I think we can open the stage for critical thinking and our panel discussion. Okay, so all right, everyone, let's open the stage for a critical debate. And here we take off the curtains from panel discussion. Let's discuss. Here we have 3 questions for each speaker, and they can sum up the answer for each question precisely in a minute or two. So let's begin with Rabia. Rabia, so Rabia, your first question is, how can a non-parent or non-teacher or an untrained person should interact with a child dealing with emotional stress? What could be those do's and don'ts according to you?
So thanks. Okay. Thanks, Ruti. So okay, as I said in the introduction part as well, the compassion. We should all develop a compassionate heart. It's not about a non-educator, non-teacher, non-parent. It's about all of us. Today's society is suffering. Be it a child, be it an adult, be it a youth, be it a young professional. All of us are having this kind of stress that what will happen in the future. People are suffering. Children are suffering that what will happen to their studies, whether the schools are going to open or not. How will we cope up with our studies? So in this case, we as a society, we need to handhold these kids. We need to motivate them. We need to be with them in a way that yes, everything could be fine. We need to encourage them that whatever is happening, it's happening for their own good, because at the end of the day, if we are trapped in houses, at our houses, it's because of their health issues. If we will go out in this pandemic, they will have bad health. They can catch any kind of infection. So this kind of, any non-parent, any non-educator, or any person, be it, we have people coming from outside, we have domestic helpers coming from outside, they are interacting with our kids. They just need to motivate them. They just need to lend their shoulders to them that yes, we are there to play with them. At the end of the day, a child, what they need, they want to play with people. They want to have a loving environment. They need to have a compassionate and that kind of environment where they feel secure. So all people, all of us should make us environment in such a way that the child should feel secure. Child should be loved. Child should feel that I am protected wherever I am. And whatever is happening, it's just a phase. It will just pass on. If the teacher, so suppose as a parent now, I'll talk as a parent now, our kids are unable to meet their friends physically. So what we can do is we can create a scenario maybe once in a week or twice in a week. We can make a video call. We can arrange a video calls of our kids with their friends so that they can talk easily. They can share their thought process. They can share their what they are doing during the day, what they have done during the week's time, how they are coping with this situation. So while doing such things, while exchanging their views, while exchanging their activities, daily activities, I think most of the children will not able to take that stress in a bad way manner. In fact, they can when they are exchanging their views with each other, they will develop more skills and they will be able to groom themselves. So in fact, I think this is the best time to support your child, to support any of the kids, to support anybody for that matter, that yes, we are all together and this is what is happening. This is just a phase and it will pass. And we should not, in fact, as you said, that we what could be do's and don'ts, then do what I can say on we should not do. What we should not do is we should not be rude to each other. the, if we all know that domestics, we have domestic helpers. They understand that it's a child, this is a child, we should not be rude to them, but at the end of the day they are not their parents. So at times what happens, they are all frustrated at the end of the day, so they can be rude, they can be little rude, they can raise their voice as well at the same point of time. So this is my request to all people, that you should not raise your voices even to these kids. They are here, they don't know that you're domestic helpers. You are there with them, you are coming morning, evening. Deal with them in a very positive way, in a very loved manner, because they are looking at you morning, evening, and they feel that no, you're a part of family. So it can be a non-parent, it can be a parent. We should all help our students and our kids in a loving manner. They should be feel protected and they should feel secure. This is what. Srimati?
I guess she's having some network
Some
issues.
network issue, in fact. Yeah, think so. So I can talk more about it, what as a parent also, or what as a non-parent also we can do, and we can help our kids during stress time. We can play with them, we can play in such a manner that they should be able to, they can divert their minds actually if they are having stress. For example, a child is under stress. Okay, I've not completed my homework. That's just fine. You have not completed your homework. Let's play. Let's devote your time to something else. Divert your mind. Take your time in doing something else. And later on, if you are tired with your studies or with your homeworks, with your daily activities, stop doing that and just divert your mind. Take your mind to something else. Play with them. Sing a song with them. Just put on some music and just do some dancing with your child. Beat your sibling also. The sibling, at the end of the sibling, is not your parent. They are non-teachers, they are non-parent, so they can play with them, they can sing a song with them, they can dance with them. So these are the activities, few activities we can do to distress the stress level for our kids, as well as it will help us also to refresh our minds, in fact.
That's absolutely true, Rabia, what you have just pointed out here. So basically, you meant to say that there should be some kind of engagement which should really make children feel happy about it. And
Absolutely.
yeah, they should stay motivated. And yes, of course, the lockdown has given them a lot of pressures of staying inside, whereas they want to explore the world, they want to go outside, go outdoors, and not just play video games. They also want to maybe play cricket or football or something. So yeah, something that which you have pointed out is very right, that the compassion is needed, and that interactive efforts are required. Yes. Thank you so much, Rabia, for these insights. Now I'm moving on to Meenakshi. Meenakshi, I would like to ask you, like subconscious mind works as a catalyst for bringing change in thinking. So give your remarks on how this can be utilized. I mean, training the subconscious mind can be utilized for optimizing a child's approach and in developing his or her overall personality?
Thank you. And you said you give me just 1-2 minutes to speak about subconscious mind. I could go on for 15, 15 hours. Anyway, yeah, I think, again, I wish we all were taught how important this subconscious mind is. We have this free of cost, always charged, enough charge for everybody. We don't need to recharge it, a tool in our hand, and we don't know how to use it. So when it comes to children, I don't know how far I can tell you. Yes, you have, but why don't we adults do it first? Why don't we adults process for the children? Because if we do use our subconscious mind, we will be stress-free, first of all. We will know exactly how to deal with certain situations. So to help the children, the first of all, you give them that love and warm and nurturing relationship so that there are basic attachments. And at the later stage, yes, of course, you can tell them about, they need to understand what the three structures of the brain. You have the conscious, you have the subconscious, and you have the unconscious. So they will not be actually able to understand what the unconscious is all about. And we are the ones who are feeding all that information to them in that unconscious brain of theirs, when they're very young. So I think it is more of a tool for us adults, and that at the later stage, maybe when they're able to have the logical thinking, that is the time we can introduce the concept of subconscious. But just for adults also, I would like to add here, those of you who are not very familiar with this, maybe, because the conscious mind goes off to sleep as soon as we sleep, the whatever 7-8 hours that we're sleeping, the conscious mind goes off. But the subconscious, as I said, it's a tool for us all the time because it is working 24 hours. So that is a weapon that we have, so that we can give it good instructions. We can give it certain methods that how to help us in controlling our emotions. And these are the things by default we can teach our children. So yes, it is a huge important tool that we have for us. So it can go on and on. Subconscious mind theory can go on and on. It's very difficult to summarize it in such a less time, I feel. But yeah, we can teach them young. We can teach them young.
So continuing this topic, Vasavi, I would like you to suggest if training subconscious mind would be impactful for preschoolers, and if so, can it be carried out? How can it be carried out? And what are the do's and don'ts you feel should be there while training the subconscious mind of children at an early stage of
Thank you, Smriti. I think Meenakshi gave off the first opening by actually explaining what is the subconscious mind, the conscious, subconscious, and the unconscious mind. So generally, our subconscious has all the feelings and experiences. When I think about some negative incidents of my childhood or is faced with similar incidents, it immediately gets me a negative reaction. So that is our subconscious mind, how our subconscious actually emits the messages right at that point of time. If as a child I was cheated, probably. So, when I meet strangers, I might think negatively about people. So that is a feeling that comes from behind, which is basically stored in the subconscious. Now, when the child is very young, till about 8 years, they do not develop the critical thinking, which is about, kind of understanding what is the correct or the wrong or whatever. But before that, everything is autopiloted. So whatever is said about us when we are very young is something that we take in as what we are. So if somebody says that, oh, the child is not so good, so our subconscious mind actually processes the information as I am not okay. And that, again, like I already said, reflects even when I'm grown up and when I need to perform, I have always a feeling. So I think that it is very important that we train the thinking about, parents usually give the nutrition and everything to the child, but we do not actually think about the subconscious mind. So here we need to be more attentive. We need to be more restrictive in how we deal with our children, not even only parents, the educators also, because children listen to their educators. And when something is said about a child in front of the child with another, parent or something, it is taken by the child and absorbed that information. So I feel that we have a lot of do's, like give the children the best experiences, motivate them, nurture them in the right way, give them the freedom and independence. Because again, when we are training our subconscious, the child needs to have positive reinforcement. They should not be punished, but they need to be positively reinforced, given independence, given the freedom. And that, in fact, gives their subconscious mind that kind of a backup, the support which they will need when they grow up, and when they find situations which are challenging, and they develop the coping skills. They don't break down. We also see people who break down when they face challenges. So that is the support we need to give them. And to parents and educators, I would say the don'ts are, do not overstress your child, do not over expect, do not create competition between the peers and among their friends. And because these are the times I have seen in my I would give a very small example. If a child is given an impression about a dog, say dogs are generally very lovable things and they don't come and bite, but if we kind of create a fear in the child about a dog, or if the child has a bad experience with a dog in their early years, when the word dog comes in their mind, they will have fear. So that is the kind of message I'm talking about. So it is very important what kind of messages till they're about 8 goes into their minds. And we as environment, we as the parent, the educator, and the people in the environment, the family, the extended family, need to keep very, very important, keep this in mind, that how an important age group we are dealing with. I hope that answers the question, Smriti.
Yes, thank you, Vasavi. Um, I think we have a lot to work on subconscious mind as well. Like Meenakshi has also pointed out, like it's an impactful weapon. So that can something which we can use against stress, with stress in the children's mind, and how we can cure any kind of stress which is actually taking place and bogging them down. Now, moving on to next question, Rabia, if you can give your remarks or thoughts on some ways that one can actually implement in making a child an independent thinker, making a child confident, and to imbibe in the child a problem solving nature. So, Rabia, if you could just suggest some ways how we can go about it.
Yeah, thanks, Amriti. I think this question is very close to my heart actually. Why? Because as a parent, I also always feel to give freedom to the child. Let them do what they are doing. Why? It's their life. They need to live their own dreams. They can't live our dreams, right? As an educator, being an educator also, I believe I'm the least last person who actually pressurize my students to get 80% marks, 85% marks, or a competition with the another child. I never compare those two students in my class. Every person, every child has its own strengths and skills. We all are born for some mission, and I'm sure everybody is trying to fulfill their mission. Everybody is trying to do their best. The best way to give the freedom to a child is to nurture them, to support them what they are doing, and try to understand them, be a mentor to them in such a way to be one of them and not as a teacher or as a lecturer to them. Once we are with them and be one of them, they will be able to share their thought process, they will be able to share their problems with us, and then we'll be able to nurture them in a right way. The most important factor to make them independent is, I agree, there are some rights and wrongs. We all tend to make mistakes. There is no person who is perfect. So till the time they won't do any wrong thing, or they won't fail anywhere. how will they learn and how will they grow? Failure is a ladder to success. If you won't fail, you won't grow. That is what I feel as an educator, as a parent. You said that we need to give them freedom, we need to make them independent. How will they be independent if they do not know what is right and what is wrong? And for understanding what is right and what is wrong, obviously they will have to make take one step wrong at least once in a life. Only then they'll be able to understand that this step was wrong, I have to do this and this would be the right step. So in order to make them free, in order to make them independent, and in order to make them confident, it is very important to let them do what they are doing, so that let them fall they will fall once, they will fall twice, but third time they will be able to learn from their mistakes, their problems. They will be able to overcome those problems, and they will be able to become an independent individual and a confident person. This is what I am doing as an educator and as a parent as well, and believe me, it is helping me a lot. If I give you a small example of my own daughter, she's in second year now, and she has cope up with a lot of stress in her life. Everybody has ups and downs in their lives. But to be honest, the kind of freedom they have, I have never pressurized them to get 95% marks. One of my daughters is in Manav Rachna University, which is one of a very good university, I believe. She's in second year. She got 90% in her first year college exams, and I'm really proud of her. She has been doing a lot of internships during this lockdown. I have given her full freedom to whatever dream she wants to fulfill, whatever goal she wants to achieve. I will be always supportive to her. Being a parent, I believe to be at their back and to always pat them whether they have got 70% or 90%. That's not a criteria. I think we have a very good example of Modi ji as our prime minister. He's a prime minister of a country, and we all know about his education background. So marks doesn't make your destiny. It is always your real life scenarios, your real life experiences, your friends, your confidence, your own character helps you to become a person you want to become. So this is what my understanding about this is. That's also Ruti. That's all I can say about it.
Kavya. And the point which you just mentioned, that at times children are actually pressurized to perform well in the academic sphere of life. So my next question is actually towards in that direction only. So Meenakshi, this is a question for you. Like, children often oscillate between staying competitive in various spheres of life and skills while dealing with the pressures of scoring well academically. So how can this jigsaw puzzle can be managed so that the overall health, mind and body, doesn't get negatively affected or deteriorate? So if you can.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Shruti. I think again we come back to stress. Again we come back to childhood, because I don't think we can dissociate ourselves from what we are as an adolescent or as a young, student, and not go back to what has happened to us in the early stages. You know, how our parents have dealt with us, what kind of ambitions has been imbibed in us. I think that is what is happening to many children today. And I enjoy working with children. As I always say, I have learned more from children than I have learned from my psychology books. So along the way, while dealing with children, it's very important to see that children are very resilient. We all know that. But at the same time, children have a learning mode, I think, and then they also have a survival mode. So which one has been triggered initially in our early life? That is very important for this later outcome. So why should a child have stress? Because the academics are planned by educators around the world, the policymakers, and if some children are able to do it, so will others be. But it's also a matter of interest. It's also a matter of your personality. Now you just cannot force a child to go for a particular line of work or career, And then also see that no, this child has never been consistent in his or her decisions. Suppose the child says, okay, I want to do engineering, or I want to go for IIT, which is the coveted one nowadays. So then if you see that no, this child has never been consistent in, choosing a profession or choosing anything for that matter, you cannot, as a parent, you must help the child to reduce those kind of expectations. Okay. And if the child is in a learning mode earlier on, the child will be calm all throughout. The child will still have curiosity, which is very important. But if the child has grown up in a survival mode, the child will only see danger. The child will only see threat. So when there's threat, when there's danger, and then there's a pressure of the academics, as you say, I don't think the child is often able to cope with it. So that is where the problem starts. So first, let us work on the, children having a better sense of themselves, so that the stressor does not matter. I don't think the external stressor matters. I don't think the coronavirus stress matters for some of us who have been handling stress, before in a better way. So these are, again, as I say, just the symptoms of a disease. The disease, it's not a nice word, but then that is the person. And if you can guide a child on trying to see what is important, whether it's the interest, whether it's your personality, whether there's a clash between your interest and what you want to do. So main thing is there should not be a clash in that. And if the personality provides you with that kind of a background, that yes, you can achieve what you want, you can go ahead. And I think our concept of examinations, the entrance examinations, that is what, from class 4, 5 onwards, people are trying to, parents and caregivers are trying to prepare their children, which is terrible. That is the only word I can use. Like you have to let children be children. You have to let them go through each stage. As I said, it's a chain, and the chain never finishes. Whether it's a child going from 0 to 20 years, there's always a chain, and what you attain at one particular stage, it is always of the capacity that you attain on the earlier stage. So the chain is still there. It does not finish. It is, again, onus is on us on how we want to handle these children. And academic pressure is magnified. I think there are other pressures later on in life which a child has to face anyway. So why do we make a big thing about academic stresses? They have books, they have to study, they have to do what they have to do. And I think they're resilient. We don't need to put it into their head that this is a big stress for them.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Vasavi, this is for you. Like Rabia has mentioned that children should be let free to choose their own options, to explore their personality, their interests, and a lot to be an independent thinker. So, what, according to you, would be would other ways to make a child independent in thinking, confident, and to literally inject that problem solving capability in them? What do you suggest?
I would add on to what Rabia has said. She already talked about appreciation, allowing the child, to kind of express and all. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you are. You are.
Yeah. Okay. So here I would say that in order to make a child independent in thinking, confidence, and to imbibe the problem solving, we constantly need to support them in the nurturing way. There should be a lot of positive reinforcement. Like I said, no punishments. But when they go wrong somewhere and we assess that that is not a wrong step.
I could hear. Excuse me.
Okay, I'll go a little slow, probably network issues. Yeah, can you hear me now, Meenakshi? Am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. So positive reinforcement, which is no punishment, but correcting them in the right way, in the right tone, and enabling them to, excel instead of feeling bad about what they did. So take a good step. We need to appreciate our children when they do small things. This appreciation actually takes them a long way, because when you feel motivated, even at this age, if my mother says, oh, you're doing something so good, I feel very motivated to, do the next good thing. So even at this age, it is like that. So just imagine about a little child when appreciated, how good they feel and how long they can go in their lives. Also, we need to, in order to make them independent, we need to allow them to access, explore, and look at the outcomes. So many times in our parenting styles, we do not allow our child to do anything. It's more you just sit here, we'll do this for you, we'll get your food, we'll go, everything, they're spoon fed kind of. But in order to develop independence, we need to teach them the right skill sets. There should be a lot of experiential learning, hands-on learning. And this pandemic has been a very good example for all the families and all the households, I feel, where children also got involved in work. Because I had a lot of, I'd spoken to a lot of parents, because there were no house helps, nothing. And in India, because we usually have house helps, we don't involve our children. So we need to actually allow them to explore and access outcomes, give them a lot of scope to do things. No negative comments, comparisons, which I already said. And one important thing is listen to them, because see, there are a lot of reasons where the stress comes in. It might not be you, it might not be us, it might be some friends, it can be peer pressure, it can be the online social media presence. That also creates a lot of stress in people's mind nowadays. So if we listen to our children, if we just sit with them and walk through their whole experience of the day, understand what is actually bothering them, I think that is going to really de-stress them to a huge extent. And also allow them to solve their problems, because once they discuss something with their elders, they always, sharing something always gives you a lot of solutions. So always answer the questions. Children always come up with a lot of questions, and we sometimes kind of ignore because of no time, or we just don't bother. But we need to actually involve in ourselves in answering their questions. N- don't spoon feed them, and be a friend. I would say, like Chanakya had said, till one age you are a parent, a friend, a mentor, a guide to your child. And all this, and even the educators, because I would remember, even during my school days, I had one educator who is always fondly remembered by me at every point of my life, because she had given me that motivation, that support. And see, that is that subconscious message still in my mind, that yeah, there's, this is how we can deal with things. She had told me once that, if you can easily drive in a car, but you should know how to walk, because tomorrow if your car breaks down, you need to walk to your destination. So those kind of things. So we really need to involve ourselves, engage ourselves with the little ones, try to put ourselves in their shoes and deal with the stress. Because I would say stress is a part of our life. Even this pandemic got us a lot of stress, but how we dealt with it was all our subconscious messages that were stored in our minds, the people we met at that point of time. If we really met negative people who would say, the world is at an end, you are done, you are gone, we would feel like that, and we would really not do anything about it. So it's very important how what kind of people you meet, and how you can you deal with it at the end of the day. Smriti.
Okay. So Vasavi, we usually we have heard that an expecting mother should feed the child with good food and good thoughts, and likewise. So stressing on an expecting mother's thoughts, can it be strategized for growth and development of a child's mental health? What could be
Of
those 2 3 things that she should be very careful of while implementing this, according to you?
See, when you are expecting, it's been in our age old, even in our all our epics and things. When a mother is expecting, the child, in fact, in the womb, starts learning around that time, because they listen, and their first learning is listening. So we talked in the Mahabharata that Arjun's son knew how to go inside the Chakravyuh but did not know how to come out. So these are messages that we already have, that it's not only nutrition. Nutrition is excessively important because of the growth of the child in the womb, the development of the brain, the development of the other parts of the body. But then the feelings, if a mother is watching horror films at that point of time, will create a lot of anxiety in the mother, which in turn percolates into the child. Because when she shivers, or when she gets that feeling of fear, that fear, the feeling automatically goes into the child. So that is why it was always it was advised that listen to good read good books, listen to good music, literature, read, get exposed to good things if now, because everybody's in the internet. So don't get into negative news. Listen to good music, devotional songs. So that kind of, motivates the child, because it gives that proper, that the vibe. Because if I am happy, the child in my womb is happy. And that, in fact, it works from that time, I would say. Because I have met somebody who was, in fact, who had a lot of problems in their life, in her life, because she always felt unwanted. Though she was, loved by the family, everything, she was felt very unwanted. And when we actually look deep into her problem, that friend of mine, I'm not a psychologist, so but we were just analyzing, and then we understood that because her mother, because she was an unexpected pregnancy for her mother, so they never wanted her when she was, when she was not born. So every time the mother, it looks like, later she found that out, that mother would say, oh, this child in my womb is unexpected, we didn't want it, it's not wanted, I don't know how. So that feeling actually stayed with her. And after, even when she grew up, she always had that feeling of void and an unwanted thing. So I feel it's very, very important that we nurture the child right from that first embryo that gets into the, womb of a mother. And it is very, very important. Smriti.
Thank you, Vasavi. Meenakshi, like I felt that we should not miss out on this part as well. But when it comes to specially abled children who are dealing with emotional stress or any kind of stress for that matter, so what do you think? What kind of measures can be taken, to heal this stress procedure in them, and how can we actually bring them to a very positive mindset?
Right. That's a very important question. Now with inclusion, we are really looking at these children. And if you just remember what I said in my slide, that it is also the environment. A lot of things were told to be genetic, but now since we know about attachments and connections, and a lot of things are depending on the environment. So we know that these children need extra help. And as schools, as peer groups, as teachers, we have to be extra sensitive because their needs are very sensitive. And a very interesting observation, in fact, I had also discussed this with the principal at Royal Guru School, that what I found is, there were some children who were very difficult to handle at school. And now during the lockdown, we were quite afraid that, there might be more problems. But what we found is they're much more comfortable in the home setting. So there could have been something at school, meeting other children, not able to read or write the way they were expected by the teachers and the, parents also maybe. So these things could have increased a lot of stress for these children, and also vice versa. So a child who's maybe very naughty at home, and then we find that now, the child is very quiet, so distractions are lesser maybe for a child, even for a child with an attention deficit or a very hyperactive child. And a hyperactive child is very difficult to handle because now being stuck inside the home, the parents are definitely finding it difficult. So there are a lot of tools, and it will, of course, take us again a long time to discuss the tools, but then the tools will not make the problems go away, as I always say that. But it will help you look at it from a calmer perspective. And parents need a lot of counseling sessions along with the teachers, the tuition teachers. So it is, I think, a group that we need, the school, the parents, and what is happening in the environment. And we can definitely be extra sensitive towards these children. And it's not only, again, about the academics, I repeat that, because suppose a child is not able to read or write, in the process, we are also giving them social and emotional skills. So there was a study which I would like to share here, which said that, in the long run, the IQ was there at the same level, because the IQ doesn't grow after 10 years, maybe. But then what they found was that the social and emotional skills were much more than other children of that particular age who had a higher IQ. So in the long run, we are giving them some learning. We just need to be extra sensitive towards them. And of course, an extra time and attention. That is most important also. Okay. Yeah, Smriti?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of solutions which we can implement. But here we need to also address the root cause, and that is actually not being aware. So, Rabia, in what way you feel that the stress management of children should be promoted so as to generate awareness on this issue? Because not many people know about it. At times, we leave a child sulky and thinking about something, lost in their own fear or thoughts, just like that, and we feel that maybe the child is not in a very good shape of mood, or maybe crying over something. But then we need to actually get in there to that depth and understand what is actually that child going through. So, in your opinion, what could be those ways of promoting and generating awareness basically regarding this? Rabia?
Yeah, so, okay. I'm so sorry. I was on mute actually. So I completely agree with Smriti what you said, that it's very important to understand the child, because at times when a child, or it could be a child, a person, at times they don't want to share their problems with anybody. They don't want to talk about it. So because of this, they they have a they go, some people get into depression. Children, for example, we have children, we have students who commit suicide because of this stress level. They do not come out, and they do not talk to their parents or to their friends or to their family, extended family, or educators. So to understand them and to make them speak about their problems, we first, I said earlier also, I mentioned earlier also, we need to be friends with them with lot of compassion. Actually, we need to build a kind of rapport with them, wherein we can build up a trust factor with them, so that they can come out of their shell, they can speak about their problems with us, they can trust us, they can believe in us, and they can open up that yes, this is the problem they are facing. It could be related to the family issue, it could be related to their academic issue, it could be related to their friends even. I know a person who was going under a stress because of the problems, because of not having that kind of harmonious relationship with her friends. So the, they were not ready to explain, they were not ready to open up also at that point of time. Being an educator, what I did, the best part is, I can give you an example. I work for an NGO as well. So there are many times, these kids are under stress. Why? They come up from those slum areas, and they are not ready to share their problems with anybody. But at the same point of time, they are not able to cope up with their studies and cope up with their learnings. So at the end of the day, they are physically getting affected, they are mentally affected. So for us as educators, we had to build up a kind of rapport and an atmosphere, wherein we had a one-to-one sessions with those kids. Actually, as a counselor, we counseled them, we understood them, we understood their point of view, we understood their mental level, mental state of peace. Then we called up their parents even, that because we had to, at the end of the day, we had to make sure that they are not, they are not, they are de-stressing yourself, they are still not under stress, and they are not facing these problems again and again, and they should be able to study proper, cope up with the studies as well. So a kind of rapport, a kind of confidence level, a trust level, one-to-one sessions with their parents, with these kids, they are very important for them to deal with these kind of stress, and for them to come out and talk about. So this is very important, to be one of them actually, and not only take care of, teach them in the class, just go in the class, teach them, uh, prepare them for the exams. That is not sufficient for any kid, be it the kid, underprivileged kids, be it a kid in a from a very good family background, or be it a kid from a mediocre family. We have to be with them in a such a way that they are able to believe us, and they are able to trust us, that yes, we are there to support them, and what we are saying, what we are doing, it is for their own benefit, and not just to demotivate them or discourage them.
Also, I think an interactive session with the parents can be
That's what I said.
also,
We need to have a
yes,
lot of interactive sessions with their parent. We need to
parents, yeah,
understand their problems as well. That why this child is facing this kind of stress. Actually,
exactly.
only then we'll be able to help these kids.
Okay. So here I have some quick common questions like uh, Rabia, let's start with you. So I feel that nature can also work as a healer for stress.
Absolutely. I was coming to this point, Smriti, actually, that
Yeah.
to deal with these kind of, but any kind of stress, the best part is to do some meditation, a yoga, or a walk, morning walk, or an evening walk, put on some music, go out for a walk, or, we have kids, not only the young kids, we can take out a kid somewhere to outside, somewhere outside, have an ice cream with your kid, have a cup of coffee, so these things make your kids and you also refresh your mind. You also get rejuvenated and your child also gets fresh. The mind of the, whatever scenario it is, whether it is a pandemic or non-pandemic situation, we all go through lots of stress in our daily lives. So in order to de-stress ourselves, I think the meditation, going out, the spending me time, for example, you have a kid of maybe 15 years old, 16 years, ask them to spend me time, give them a me time thing. Me time is very important because you are able to talk to yourself actually, and that is also very important for your stress.
What are your thoughts, Meenakshi, on this nature as a stress buster for children?
You have to
Meenakshi?
unmute.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. I totally agree with that. And then again, of course, my psychology still pulls me back. So I have to say that why begin stress in the first place? It's so sad that we have courses on stress management and anger management. So I think initially, if you can help our young children to look at the world as it is, and try to handle the situations that come to you. So we have to really work hard to let these children believe that things can be taken care of. And then of course some of the behavior and the environmental issues will always be there, like we said, things like poverty, things like fights between husband and wife, which is always going to affect. And we are going to transfer these kind of stress, because as an adult I'm stressed, I'm handing it over to my child, and then the child grows up, and then the child goes into some other kind of difficulties, and that's the time we tell them, please go and do meditation, please go and do some other kind of use some other kind of tools. It does not work very well with them. So we need to look at their lives, we need to look, and these are excellent tools, I mean, what Rabia has shared with us, and of course so many more. But then little bit of it, maybe it's a bypass to, you will reach the same destination definitely, but it is a sort of a bypass. So we also need to take the main road and see exactly what we can do about stress. And it is going to come to us anytime, but we have to be prepared. I think that's how I would like to end it.
And what are your thoughts, Vasavi, about using nature as the as a stress buster for children?
Absolutely. I agree to it, because nature being our third teacher, environment being our third teacher, and because after the parent, after the educator, it's the environment we learn from. And I think being one with nature, being actually, out in the open, in a huge, in a field, in any kind of a place away from the house, I think it is a big stress buster, because it really kind of de-stresses you. I feel there are some activities you can do with nature. Pottery is a highly de-stressing activity, because people who make pottery, they kind of release their stress in it. So people have different expressions. Somebody would do something else, somebody would take some mud and make something. So nature, I think, is something that really absorbs our stress, because again, Mother Earth, and like she takes all the stress, I think the human can also leave out a lot, and nature is always bountiful and accepting to our things. So I think nature is a big, and from early years children need to have that nature connect. We do not need to create a nature connect later. It should come naturally. But being in an environment where now we are in 25th floor and 47th floor of a buildings, I don't know what kind of nature connect is there, but I think schools are consciously creating this connect, and they're doing activities where children actually go out for nature trips and all, nature walks. We are talking about forest schools. So I think there are a lot of benefits to it, and it's a huge stress buster, and that I personally have that feeling, and I feel most of us are going to agree that nature works as a cure to your stress.
Thank you so much, Vasavi. So before we wind up this session, here are two rapid fire questions for three of you. So as far as I'm concerned, three things that relate with my childhood is food, books, and lots of outdoor games. So what about you, Vasavi?
Three things that relates to my childhood: books, yes, uh, a lot of thinking, and observing, and the third thing is outdoors, like I said, nature.
What about you, Minakshi?
Yeah, I think we were all so lucky to be outdoors most of the time. Yes, definitely that
Exactly,
was
yes.
one. And I remember a lot of laughter. I remember my father used to tell a lot of jokes. And I used to inevitably find those jokes in some books, and he used to tell us, "How dare you read that book? This is my joke." So there was a lot of laughter, which was very happy. And there was a lot of music. There was a lot. I really
and
relate to this.
and Rabia?
Yeah, so music, outdoor activities, trips, and yes, the last one I cannot forget is, being me.
Okay, yeah, that's very precious.
That's true.
Yes.
That's very precious.
So I used to watch cartoons and sing a lot, and maybe bother my mom a lot to deal with the stress. So what you used to do, Rabia, to deal with your stress when you were a kid?
Uh, Actually, Smriti, till the time I did not get married, I did not have to deal with any kind of stress for that matter. Did not, my parents even did not give me that kind of, academic pressure. I did not take any academic pressure, and so there was no time when I had to deal with such kind of stress. But yes, you can talk about some relationships. Everybody has some relationships stress. That
Yeah.
was the only stress I had to deal with. But yeah, the music was the only area which I helped me to come out of that stress situation.
And what about you, Minakshi?
Yeah, slightly from the older generation, so we didn't have cartoons like you to go back to. There was no television that early in life, and I'm also giving away my age over here. But yeah, actually, as Rabia says, we didn't have too many stressors that time. We could not identify them as stressors, so it's so difficult for us to really understand what it was. Maybe it was not getting the food that we wanted to eat. Something as simple as that,
Yeah,
and then
these were the kind of small, tiny kind of stresses
actually,
that we used to have. Even
yes, yes.
fight with your siblings or
Right.
something.
Something like that, other siblings getting more priority over you. Those were things that we were worried about. And also trying to wear jeans. That was an issue in my time, to wear jeans or not wear denim trousers. So these are very simple things. And now, of course, it sounds simple, but whatever it is, as a child, whatever your stress is, that is so important. So it doesn't have to be the same kind of stressor. But yeah, maybe there was
Exactly.
some kind of stress. Yes.
And Vasavi, what you used to do?
uh, I had a lot of stress because I lost my father when I was only 4, and we had a lot of problems at that point of time. So at to deal with stress, particularly, I used to write. I used to write a diary from my very early childhood, and still I have that habit. I used to paint, and initially I used to do small pencil sketches, send it to the Assam Tribune, where they would take out, they would publish the drawings, and I still have those cutouts. So I used to paint a lot, and I was always with nature. So, when you asked that question about nature as a stress buster, it really kind of, resonated with me, because I used to walk around. We lived in a place where, my grandparents were around, and it was a huge area. And I used to just walk, and they used to have those tator hal, which we call, weaving unit, because my grandmother was an entrepreneur of that age. And I used to sit with those, weavers, learn from them and all of that. So all of that used to take me away from a lot of stress that we had. And that stress was not actually given to me. It was probably in the environment because of that situation at that point of time. But I dealt with it pretty well. That's how I feel. So
Okay, so the only thing I was really wondering about stress when I was a kid was, why is my torchlight not reaching moon? So I had been
Actually.
lying on the terrace and thinking about it. But honestly speaking, this has been a very interactive session with a lot of insights coming in, pouring in. I know we are really short of time. In fact, we are over time now. But here are some of the key takeaways of the webinars. There are many key takeaways actually, but I would like to point out some of the key takeaways. Okay, we have a chat from one of the attendees who has mentioned that journaling, visual imagery, sensory activities, etc., do some activities for stress free. Absolutely, absolutely. So, um, so some of the key takeaways of the webinar before we end this session. Uh, so point one is, I feel that incorporating compassion in the regime of each and every child's learning and growing phase is very important. Using subconscious mind to heal and strengthen a child from within is also very critical. To keep things interactive with the children, which is something everyone should practice, be it a parent or non-parent, a teacher uh, or a stranger, while dealing with children with emotional stress or without emotional stress for that matter. And creating a positive environment around a child is imperative. So these are some of the key takeaways of the webinar. Dear attendees and all the panelists, I would request you to share your key takeaways as well on the Facebook page as soon as the gets over, live video gets over. You can also share your takeaways in the comment box. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for sharing your knowledge and sharing your thoughts about it. Thank you, Minakshi. Thank you, Rabia. Thank you, Vasavi. And thank you, all the attendees. I hope you liked the session and you could actually have a lot of takeaways like I have. Thank you so much.
thank you,
Thank
Smriti.
you, Shruti,
Thank you,
so much.
Simriti. Wonderful
Thank you,
session.
Vasili.
Thank you
Bye.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Vasvi. Thanks a lot.
Bye,
Bye bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you,
Take care.
Vasili.